I don't know where young adult ends.
We don't either.
No, we took a small survey to figure out where young adult ends. And there is something I think that happens in your 30s that starts.
And we're not there yet, so like.
No, well, so I think I'm squarely within the young adult category, and I'm 27.
I'm 28.
And we both feel like we're young adults.
I think, yeah.
But we talk to people in their mid-30s who don't feel like they're young adults anymore. Mm-hmm. But we have friends who are in their early mid-30s who we relate to completely. We feel like we share the same life experiences and situations. I hesitate to say it's children that makes that transition happen, because not everybody has kids and not everybody is in a relationship. But kids certainly add an element to your transition. If you do have kids, you start to.
It does. Yeah.
You start to kind of.
Yeah, your agenda is no longer just your own.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think there's something in cities like Charlotte. A lot of people that are out of college, and even then you have people. The college experience is now so much longer than I think it has ever been. You really, a lot of people probably in Charlotte have advanced degrees. And so what I think of the young adult, where St. John's could really excel, has a lot of opportunity, is with people in their late 20s, early 30s. And, from like 25 to 35. People that are out of college.
Welcome again to Midweek Moments with St. John's. We are becoming better introduced to Emma and Nate Dove as they have moved here into the life of St. John's. Nate is serving on our ministry staff as our minister with youth and young adults. And Emma is a PhD student at the University of Virginia up in Charlottesville. And while she's a student at that school, she's not at that school. She's here in Charlotte, and she's learning how to do PhD studies during a pandemic. Aren't we all enjoying what all we're learning during this time as to how to live in distant ways? So, let me once again welcome to the conversation today, Emma and Nate.
I think you didn't know for sure if you would go off to like a theological school. I think that was a little bit different decision for you.
So what was your motivation or your vision of choosing a divinity school for a master's program?
I think I'm the kind of person who just wants to integrate different parts of my life. And so as I was going and asking all of these questions at the Episcopal chaplaincy and growing in community with my friends and also studying prayer books from the Middle Ages, I was seeing, some correlations between these two things, understandably, I think, and also sensing a tension in the classroom between the inherent spirituality of the medieval manuscripts I was so interested in and the obvious sort of mindset of a couple of my professors. Not to say that I didn't learn a whole lot and really enjoy all of my classes. Right. But that tension was, I think, one of the things that drove me to apply to divinity school where, there's chapel in the middle of the day, right? So I could go downtown to the Beinecke Library and study prayer books with Ray Clemens and Barbara Shaler, and then come back up for chapel at 11, and pray and sing and be in community with others, and really integrate praxis and study in a way that I found very satisfying and also helpful. Another thing is, even though I don't feel called to ministry, I did, I spent a year after college not in school anymore, working for a translation and transcription company, and felt called back to teaching and learning. And so, it was the coming together of a couple of different things. And also, Yale Divinity School happens to have the Institute of Sacred Music, another institution besides Berkeley Divinity School, that's sort of under its umbrella. And the Institute of Sacred Music has nothing for me to do with music. Very talented musicians fall under the umbrella of the Institute of Sacred Music, but it's really a center for interdisciplinary study. So people who are interested in liturgy and in literature and in the visual arts and in music all come together under that umbrella, and it's really it's an interdisciplinary spot within the Divinity School, which, for me, a person who doesn't like institutional or disciplinary boundaries very much,
right,
made sense.
Well, then that would make sense too, with that sense of your self-awareness of the need for integrating, of bringing things together, and the systemic wholeness that you're trying to bring about. I do think you each of you have sort of pointed to this idea of calling. We have, in our tradition, not just as Baptists, but I think as Christians, we have neglected, or we have mistreated the word calling. We've made it as if it's something otherly or odd, rather than it is that sense within us that connects us to a deeper meaning and begins to integrate us as who we are as an individual with the life of the world, the life in the world, so that we find meaning here and we find meaning out here in the world as we begin to interplay between those. And then both of you have spoken this as well, that there's this horizontal dimension of faith and a vertical dimension of faith. And you were both integrating in your own way. All right, I've experienced faith in this way, but I'm sensing as if there's more to this part of faith development, faith formation, than what I've learned. So I'd like to ask you what you sense within yourselves right now about moving into a context like St. John's and moving into a city like Charlotte. At this, really, it's a once everything can get vaccinated, I guess, it's this city that is just almost has no boundaries as to how much change and growth and transformation is going to happen in people's lives in this general area. So what's going on inside of you as you realize we're coming into a spiritually progressive community in a city that's changing? What's going on inside of you as young adults with that?
Yeah, I think it is an exciting spot to be, full of challenges and opportunities. And I think those challenges and opportunities are especially located at a church like St. John's, that is situated in a space with a ton of young adults, a ton of people our age who are post-college, just getting settled into their careers, maybe are somewhat connected to church or have some sort of spiritual practice, and who are, though, no matter, I think, where they are on the spirituality spectrum, desperately desire to be around people and community and to have sources of help and of there's just something about community that I think young people are specifically drawn to. And I think church has become less of a factor in the lives of millennials, that we don't particularly know how to get that community in a way that I think previous generations had. And what's exciting is to be in a progressive space in a city full of young people, and to figure out how to help bridge the gap, I guess, and to see young people who are generally motivated by they're motivated to stand up for what's right. They're motivated to see justice. They're motivated for all of these things, and they desire community. I want to help them see that church can be a space for those things to play out. Yeah. Because I think there's because we're in the Southeast, because we're in a space where religion, for people our age, is often seen as kind of the bad guy or the backwards place. I want to help build those conversations. So that's what's really exciting. It's challenging, but we're just ripe for opportunity here.
Well, and we're so ready to be a laboratory of learning.
Yeah.
And any laboratory has all kinds of experiments that weren't successful.
Yeah.
So we'll learn in this laboratory together, and we'll invite others in to help us learn as we go forward.
Yeah.
Well, in youth ministry, in ministering with youth and their families in the 21st century here, where the speed of change is nonstop, what are some foundations for you as you try to communicate with teenagers, middle schoolers and high schoolers, and even those just getting started beyond high school, and then their families and all of the transitions that take place in that 6, 7, 8 years of time? But what are some foundation pillars that you try to build upon?
Yeah, I think you probably hit the nail on the head. The youth ministry, what worked a year ago, what worked 5 years, especially what worked 5 years ago, 10 years ago, doesn't work today. And then you can see a rapid progression in youth ministry and how it's evolved. And it's really hard to keep up with the theories of youth ministry. I mean, like, there was a time, I think, in the not so distant past where you could simply plan something and communicate it well enough, and you would have a critical mass of people, so as when that event happened, you would have enough people show up to where it was meaningful, and
they were looking for something to do.
Yeah. And today, I think what most youth ministers know is that students are so stretched in their extracurricular activities, school, trying to get into college, work, all of these things. The church has really become the extra thing that you have to figure out how to fit that into your life. For me, I think the thing that I want to emphasize is I want church to be something more than just that extra thing. I want it to be meaningful to your formation, not only your spiritual formation, but your actual formation as a young adult or as a youth. And I want it to help you in your journey to wherever you may be going next. So I want it to be practical as much as I want it to be formative to you spiritually. And so I think what I try to do, and then what we've tried to do in the past, is build these moments of practicality into the church experience, so that yes, you're coming to church to learn about God and to learn about spirituality and to learn about who you are in relationship to all these big questions in life. But I also know that you have to know how to get into college, and we want to help you through that process too. So how can we build things into church that are helpful to you as you progress through high school and move into the next phase of life? So Emma and I, for example, in our past church, we designed this experience where we took students away on a trip, and we built into that experience a college application workshop, which Emma pretty much ran, but it was something that we intended to do to provide this really practical exposure to something else, just to an important part of life. And we even toured our college while we were in Atlanta, which is where we went sort of as the pinnacle of this experience, of this college application experience. And to me, that's just an example of how to bridge the practical together with the spiritual. So the church is more than just, it's a resource for you. It's a resource not only for you to go to college, but it can be a resource to help you learn how to serve other people in your community. So I think young people are motivated by coming together and actually doing something to benefit the wider community around them. A lot of them need, on a very practical level, a lot of them need community service hours, so why not give them to them at church? But also, I think there is just a general sense of we want to be doing something other than just be sitting around talking. We want to actually do something that we can see the results of that happen. So I think service and work, and service work and actually going out of the building are things that are important to
Well, and you've
ministry.
you've seen enough about us already,
Yeah.
and learned enough about St. John's to know that servant church component is in our DNA.
Yeah.
And that's largely been written into how youth ministry unfolds here. Not to say that we just always want to do the same thing every year.
Right.
And so enhancing that, finding out what are the causes and the interests for each of those young people and their families, and getting them involved. What would you say, being involved as a teenager in a progressive church, you've mentioned earlier about some of that, disestablishmentarianism, some of that deconstruction that had to take place in you, and then reconstruction. What do you see that could happen in the life of a teenager so that they have some aha moments in their formative years of walking through?
The biggest aha moment that I want any teenager to experience is that it's okay to not have all the answers, and that I don't want to give you all of the answers during this time, because if I give you all of the answers, I'm bound to be wrong. And you're bound to hear contradictory information and think that because your pastor provided you with wrong information or information that's contradictory to what you're hearing later on, then your pastor wasn't looking out for your best interests, and there's reason to doubt the institution of the church, and there's just, it snowballs, I guess, from there. But what I want every teenager to come away with from their youth group experience is that it's okay to not have all the answers, and it's okay to let mystery sort of play out within the idea of God. And if you can have those things, if you can be open-minded in that regard, I think you can move forward in your life and not look back at church and your youth group experience as something that's kind of a negative or something that didn't set you up for your future faith formation. But it sort of just allowed you to question and to doubt. And those are the things that are really important for me, and I think that teenagers need as a part of their youth group experience.
And I used to have this little piece of paper that I would carry in my wallet that said, it's more important to ask the right questions than to have the right answers.
Right.
Because you can have the right answers to the wrong questions. And I'm not sure the Spirit of God can still be at work in our lives much if we already have all the answers. I think there needs to be some rearranging of the furniture, so to speak.